The presentations you've heard so far are all about the importance of trade, how much trade there is, and how active wine trade is. This presentation is about a lack of trade, and I'm going to show you a picture. So that lots of authors on this paper. The important one is actually Rolf Mueller, in alphabetical order there. Rolf is right here. Rolf is a very cheerful person. Only a few things make him grumpy. Rolf took this picture. I don't know if you can see Julian there. Hinokli is there, a few others. This is there's been lots of papers at this session about wine tasting. None of the trade papers are about wine tastings, but this one is because Rolf, who's normally cheerful, got grumpy about this. And I'll tell you why. This was tasting Rieslings in California, and so there was a half a dozen or so American Rieslings we brought in, and Canadian we brought in from here and there. And Rolf wanted to have Rieslings from Germany shipped, or he wanted to buy those in California. He wanted one of us to go on the web, buy some Rieslings, have them delivered to us in California. We found nobody willing to ship us the Rieslings that Rolf had in mind, and he schlepped those in his suitcase from Germany to California, so you can understand why he got a little grumpy. While he was in California, he got enamored with some Zinfandels in the foothills of California, and nobody was willing to ship those to Germany for him, so he schlepped Zinfandels from California back. Now we know there's lots of wine trade, but what there isn't, Rolf asserts, is a convenient wine trade in what you might think of as the long tail. There are literally thousands and thousands and thousands of wine labels, we would argue almost all the wine sales are from a literal or a figurative handful of wine labels with a very long tail, with volumes that are very small, but wines that are very important to certain consumers. Why isn't there an Amazon for wine trade as there is for book trade? So I can sit in my office in Davis, and if I want a German book written in German that's in some used bookstore in Berlin, I can probably get it on the web, shipped to me. The physical copy, I don't mean electronically. The question is, why isn't that available for wine? We understand that a wine wholesaler isn't going to ship a bottle to his wholesale shop to ship to a wine shop somewhere in Davis, California. They don't have the shelf space, but that's what the web's all about. So we were left, Rolf was grumpy, the rest of us were left with a puzzle. Gee, why isn't this easy? Isn't this the 21st century? So that was the puzzle. And much of the paper goes through alternative reasons, gravity kind of model reasons for why this trade wouldn't happen. None of them were very satisfying. The hypothesis then is that borders, which are created by governments, are what gets in the way of shipping wine internationally. That's also true, by the way, and we'll show you a picture in a minute, within the United States, where borders are particularly important across states. I find people talking about European wine trade, by the way, odd to call it international trade, because I think of Europe as one country, and yet some of you think of the United States as one country, but it's not when it comes to wine trade, and I'll show you a picture in a minute. That is to say, shipping wine from California, Kentucky is probably just as tough or tougher than shipping wine from Germany to Austria, for example, because of government borders more than anything else. So we looked around a bit, and this hypothesis, which I'll let you read given the time I have, is a problem. So here's this long tail I'm talking about. These few high volume wines, before I have the discontinuity here, they get traded. They count for almost all of the volume of wine, but there's very, very long tail, and certain people get excited about some wine out here and would like to consume this on a special occasion or something at home, and wouldn't want to have to fly to Germany, buy it at a wine shop in Germany, and fly home again to have that wine. Rolf did the work. He looked at a bunch of websites, asked them if they ship wine. They said, yeah, but only a certain couple of labels. or somebody would ship for you, but not everything. And many of the wines, particularly the specialty wineries, were available in the home country, but weren't available. I could go to a website and buy some Zinfandel from the foothills to be delivered in Davis, but Rolf couldn't do that in Kiel. So sitting here in Berlin, I said, gee, I'll go to a wine shop, and I typed in one of the wines on that table that table of wines I showed you, and Google was very happy to sell me some things. They weren't willing to sell me they didn't even list the wine that I was looking for, but they listed me a bunch of things that somebody thought might be a substitute. Well, it may well be a substitute for me, because I don't know, but they weren't a substitute for Rolf, who really does care about the Rieslings that he's got. And there's transportation and infrastructure and all of those things, none of which are very satisfying. We've heard from everybody in this room, there's lots of trade. Germany is very good about trading things. The United States is reasonably good about trading things in terms of logistics and the like. But so that doesn't seem the explanation. The explanation seems to be governments. Here's within the United States, there's only 12 states that essentially have free trade in wine among states. So even within the United States, this shipping to a consumer from a winery is a problem. The only thing I want to read here is we thought we were vexed by this problem. So was Adam Smith in 1776. Adam Smith writes about wine, but he doesn't write about this in the context of wine. But he does get the concept of opportunity cost pretty much nailed in this quotation. So the hypothesis is this vexation of wine shippers dealing with regulations. So this is a long list of regulatory agencies that deal with wine shipments between Germany and the United States, or vice versa. Rolf did, I think he just did this for fun. He ran wine regulations through an estimator of how complex the language was. And of course, the result was that regulations are unreadable. Unless you're a specialist in regulations, there's a fixed cost associated with dealing with regulations, which is another reason low volume folks wouldn't want to have to deal with that. I'm not going to wait for you to take the picture. I have to keep moving. Okay. So what can we say? There's this regulatory thicket. Is that different than other products? We think so. Products like books, it may not be all that different from other food products. I know from personal experience that milk product regulations in the United States at least are even more complicated than this, and international trade in milk products, dairy products in general, is vastly complicated with regulations as well as tariffs. Is it regulation that keeps bilateral web stores out of a long tail of wine? Can we show causality here? We haven't done that in this paper. We do a lot of things in this paper, but we don't do that. And for now, Rolf keeps schlepping wine around the world in suitcases, which he did here. Thank you.